feel like I'm not giving this book justice that it deserves. Hey guys, my name is Amber, and for today's video I'm going to be doing my August wrapped up. So if you haven't already noticed, I have a new background. I bought my first ever bookshelf and I decorated it, and I have a whole video of me doing all that, getting the bookshelf, and just, yeah, all of that. So if you want to watch that, you should watch that video, but after you watch this one. So for August, I read 14 books, but I completed 14 books, but I DNF'd one, so technically that's 15, I guess. Also in August, I did my owls and newts. So to explain that, I kind of last minute decided to do it, my newts, because I saw everyone doing it and I felt like FOMO, so I was like, let me do this. So the fact that I read 9 books in July really helped, so I just counted those books towards my owls and just kind of said that those were for my owls. So for my owls, I'm trying to become a healer. So for my owls last month, I was supposed to do charms, Raleigh, history of magic, anything cards, caravan creatures, astronomy, transfiguration, inclusion. That was 8 books. I read 9. Only, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the books counted towards my owls, so I'm missing 3. So then, I just have to do something. So starting with the books that I read for the owls that I didn't complete in July, I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It was very good. Oh, also I don't have it because I borrowed it from the library, but I did buy a copy because I gave it 5 stars. It was so good, such a unique book. Like, I don't even know what else to say about it. I feel like everyone's rated it at this point except for me. But it's about this famous person named Evelyn Hugo, and it tells her story of like her and all her relationships with all these men and how it got to that point. And yeah, I feel like that's the easiest way to explain it. It explains all her relationships with her 7 husbands throughout her life and how she became famous as well. And it's just so good, honestly. I don't even know what else to say about it. Like, I loved her, obviously. I loved how realistic she was. You're gonna see a pattern of that throughout this month too. Like, I actually throughout like every video I ever make, I always talk about, like, I love realistic. That's a thing that I love about books. Whenever it feels so real. Like, and this felt real. I felt like after I read this book, I wanted to look her up and watch one of her movies or something, but then I was like, oh, she's not real. So I was like so disappointed. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I loved her. Loved how real it was. Like, and you know, in a way, she's like the bad guy, like a villain, I guess, in this book. Like, she's not really nice, honestly, but at the same time, like, she's such a likable person. I don't know. It was good. I suggest reading it. I gave it 5 stars. I don't have much else to say. The next book I had to read, I also didn't mention, that was for charms. This one is for Defense Against the Dark Arts, and for charms I had to read an adult book, so I read that. And for the Defense Against the Dark Arts, you have to read a book that starts with R. And the only book that I had that started with R, I believe, was Red Queen, and I just didn't want to read a big book. I wasn't in the mood for it in that moment, so I just looked on Scribd and I looked up books that start with R, and the first book that popped up was this children's book called Rude Cakes, I guess. I gave it 5 stars because I was like, I guess it was good. I just remember saying in my Goodreads review that it had a good moral. I believe it was like, the moral of the story was like, you need to get better at sharing. It was a really dumb book. It was like literally like 5 pages, but if you want to check it out, I guess, check it out. It was okay. Technically, I should give it like 3 stars because it was okay. Like, it wasn't all that. But I was just like, you know what? Let me support the author and just give it 5 stars. Like, who cares? It's a children's book. I doubt anyone cares that much. Anyways, and the last book that I need to read for the owls that I read in this month was for the potions, and it was to read the sequel to another book. Or, I mean, just to read a sequel. And so I read Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. And that one I actually have. So I can't really say much about this book because of the fact that it's the sequel, and I don't know if everyone's read the first book, which is This Savage Song, but that one's about Katie Grant and August is a monster, and there's a big war going on in their city, and it's just kind of like them trying to figure out, like, do they want to be the villain or do they want to be like the hero in the story, and it kind of like just goes to them trying to figure out their own morals, and just, yeah, and there's kind of a romance, I guess. Not really. But yeah, so the second book, it was good. I gave it 4 stars. I read this in the beginning of the month, so I'm trying to really think about how I felt about this. With my rating system, a 5 is I would read it again because it was so good, and then a 4, it was so good, but I probably wouldn't read it again. So with seeing that I gave it a 4, It obviously had some factors. I think it kind of dragged. That was what happened for me. Not much else to say about it really though. But other than it dragged, so I probably wouldn't read it again. But I still very much enjoyed it, and I suggest reading it. But I just wouldn't read it again. But I enjoyed reading it the first time. If that makes sense. Yeah. Now getting into the actual notes. So for that, for herbology, you had to read an audiobook. So for that one, I read A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahati Mafi. And yeah, it was very good. I gave it a 4.5. But in the Goodreads, you obviously can't give points, whatever. So I gave it a 4, meaning I wouldn't read it again. But again, it was still very good. I loved, what's the word? The moral of the story? I don't know how to explain it. So this book, let me just say what it's about. It's about this girl named Sharon. Sharon, I don't know how to say it. She's a Muslim girl, and this is showing the aftermath, like this is in the point of the aftermath of 9/11, and so it's showing her dealing with not the consequences, how everyone is treating her. And she lives in America, and everyone's just like, they're scared. When there's fear, there's violence, I guess. And so like everyone was violent towards her, being mean to her, bullying her. And so anyways, so it's showing her dealing with that. And then also the fact that she moves like everywhere. She's constantly moving all the time. Like every year she moves somewhere new, so she's constantly going to new schools. So that's another factor that kind of doesn't help. She's not like staying consistent, and she's not having many friends, I guess you would say, that she's being consistent with. So like in this book, she's not very trustworthy of people, because she just assumes that everyone either feels bad for her or like just hates her. So she doesn't really have that many friendships. But then in this book, she kind of like goes out of her comfort zone. She tries something new. She also meets this guy. Love story. I really like the romance in this book. His name is Ocean. Like I thought that was such a unique name. But yeah, his name is Ocean, and yeah, a little something happens there. And towards the end of the book, it was very like drama filled, I feel like. But in the moment, I was kind of like in the mood for that. But if you're not like into that, I guess you wouldn't like this. Another thing that I saw that I thought was so funny, I read some reviews after I read it, and I forgot who, but it's another YouTuber here that's known, Whitney, I think, from Witty Novels, and she was like, this reminded me of High School Musical, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this literally is kind of like High School Musical, but at the same time, like I loved High School Musical, so I was all for it. Like it wasn't that, like it was kind of like the plot of High School Musical, but at the same time, it was definitely way more intense, and there were way more things that were at stake, I feel like, for Ocean, because in High School Musical, like Troy, he's like basketball, or like with the girl, or I don't even remember what High School Musical is about really, but if that gives you a hint, I feel like that's a spoiler kind of, saying that it's like High School Musical, but at the same time, you probably won't even remember this if you ever read it. But so it was kind of like that, but it was way more intense. There were much more things at stake. Another thing I enjoyed was her relationship with her older brother. They really seemed to love each other. I also liked her relationship with her dad. That was good. And yeah, other than that, there's not much else to say. There was just something in me that was just like, I feel like I wouldn't read this again though, even though it was really good. So that's why I gave it a 4. But it was still really good, so I suggest reading it. Then, next in herbology, I had to read a book that was from at least 350 pages to 390 pages. And so for that, I read With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. And I have that book as well. And so this book is about Amani Santiago. And she became a teen mom her freshman year, I believe, of high school. And so it kind of shows her dealing with that. And also trying to pursue her dreams of becoming, like, I guess a chef or something. Like, she's trying to be in the field of the culinary field or whatever. She's trying to work in that, and she loves cooking and all that.
I lost the footage for what I said, but this book follows her as she tries to achieve her dreams of being a chef while also struggling to deal with daycare drop-offs, custody issues, and making ends meet alongside college applications, budding romances, and the high school rumor mill. This book was slightly boring, but it was still super cute. But I feel like the plot was a little weak. I gave it a 4 because I could really relate to the main character because she was half Puerto Rican. But I just mainly thought it was a cute story.
The next thing for the newts, we're still on charms. to get my E, I believe it was. I had to read a book with the gorgeous cover, and I used a book that I read in July for that, which was Anne of Green Gables, and yeah, this is the book. It had a very beautiful cover. I don't know if you can see it. It's the Puffin and Bloom edition, and yeah, I really like this. It was really pretty, and it was a good book. If you want to see how I felt about it, go watch my July wrap up, I guess. The next subject was Defense Against the Dark Arts, and the first one was to read a book that was Black Under the Dust Jacket, and so I counted Turtles All the Way Down that I read in July towards that. And the next prompt was to read the first book that you could think of, and I chose An Absolutely Remarkable Thing for this. And this book, I don't have it, I got from the library, but so this book is about April, and she sees this statue, and so then she decides to make a video on it, and she calls it the Carl. And then this video goes viral because all of a sudden there are all these statues called the Carls, like all over the world. So then she gets famous, and so this book goes through her and dealing with this fame and everything, and also her trying to figure out what the Carls are doing on Earth, and if they want something from them, like what's their point? What's the point of them being there, I guess. So I thought this story was very unique. I feel like I've never heard of something like this before. So yeah, I also liked how it showed how being famous and rich and all that stuff isn't all that it's made to be. Like it's not as glamorous as people make it out to be. And it really shows like the behind the scenes and how it feels and just the struggles of it. And I also liked the character April. Like I feel like she was such a unique I feel like she was so imperfect. Like, I feel like in other books, like, the main person is, like, the perfect person, and everyone else around them is, like, horrible. But with her, I feel like she was imperfect, and it was okay. Like, she didn't handle everything in her life perfectly. And that's okay sometimes, because not everyone's perfect, like how they make it out to be in the movies and in all the books, honestly. And so, yeah, that was the main thing that I really liked, was her. And the ending was really good. I really loved it. Like, you just have to read this book because it was just so good. I don't know what else to say. I'm not very good at describing how I feel. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about that book. Next, I read The Cruel Prince, and for that, I used it for potions, and it was to read a friend's favorite book. And my friend Madison, she isn't a booktube or anything, but my friend Madison, this is her favorite book, and she constantly told me to read this book, so I finally got to it this month, and so that worked out that was one of the prompts. So I gave this book 5 stars. Girl, this book was so good. To be honest, world building, not there. Plot, it was okay. I was there for the romance. I understand there's like people that hate this book because of the romance, and then there's people who love the book because of the romance. I'm on that side, obviously. I do see how people are like, oh, like Carden is so mean, like why did she like him? But like, also, no, not really, because I know there's no reason where like, oh, like just because he has a bad past doesn't mean like he has a reason to act that way, but still, I feel like in the book it explains, like he ends up being like, oh, I didn't, like, okay, so I feel like this is not a spoiler because it happened in the beginning, but in the beginning of the book there's this scene where I forgot what happened. It was like they were in the water, and they were like these monster things in the water. I forgot what they're called. And so Jude and her sister end up getting thrown in the water, and those, like, they're humans, so when these things like in the water, like these monster things, can possibly kill them. And so like Carden, he's out there with his friends, like laughing, and they're like, oh, you're about to die, like we want you to die. But then in another situation, I mean, this is basically a spoiler, like Carden ends up explaining, like, I knew what I was doing, and I knew I was trying to, like, you know, like bother you but not end up killing you, if that makes sense. Like I feel like you just have to read the book, but he ends up like explaining himself in a way, him being like, I wasn't actually gonna do this because I ended up doing this, like, you know. Oh, I feel like I'm not giving this book justice that it deserves, but it was so good. I didn't even explain what this book is about. This book is about Jude, and so Jude, well, it's mainly about Jude. Jude, when she's a human. She's living her whole life with her human family. But then one day, this fairy from, what's the place called? Jesus, do I know anything about this book? Apparently not, and apparently I love it so much. But her parents end up getting killed. So her and there's three of them. Her and her two sisters end up moving to this fairyland, and they're like, what? Like, we were humans, so now they kind of like hate their life. But then they're happy, and she's somewhat happy, I guess. And so she's older now, and she's accustomed to this life. She's used to the fact that she's living with the person, like, she ends up having to live with the person that killed her parents, like, what? But she kind of just deals with it. And then there's like this hierarchy, like, you know, there's the king and the queen and all that junk. And so she wants to be one of the knights, in the palace or whatever, working for the king. She wants to be one of the knights working for the king. So she ends up, so yeah, that's just like, this book is just her trying to be one of the knights. And if you want to find out if she ends up being one, read the book. It's good. Like, I promise, read it. It's good. I feel like it's not that big of a deal, the whole thing with Carden, because I feel like he explains himself. Anyways, this video is so long. Like, girl, I only got through, I think, 7 books or 8 books or something, and it's so long, and I still have like 7 books to go. So I've decided to break this up into 2 parts, this August wrap up. So this is the first part. Thank you for watching me rant on books, but also not really, because I can never explain myself correctly. And yeah, I hope you like this video. Comment something down below. Like this video, please. Subscribe. And check out my Goodreads. Friend me on there, because I love making new friends on there. And check out all my other social media, like my Instagram, my Snapchat, all that. Add me on all those things. And yeah, goodbye.